the button. It'll stop, it'll show me when it goes. Oh, and then if I am looking off to the side, it's because I'm looking for comments. Hi, everybody. This is Jeanne Casteen, Democratic candidate for Maricopa County School Superintendent. And I tried to keep my focus this week about our Corporation Commission candidates. We have one Democrat who is our Corporation Commissioner, and that's Sandra Kennedy. But we have three really great candidates. Anna Tovar was on well, I guess it was Monday of this week. It's COVID time, so it's really hard to remember all that kind of stuff. And so now today I'm joined by somebody by the name of Shea Stanfield. And I'm going to get to Shea in just a minute, but I have a really cool announcement that I want to make, because today Jeanne Casteen, can you see it? Oh shoot, hold on just a second. How do you see this? All right, I'm going to have to change my background. You guys can see. Forget it. It's a yard sign. Okay, people, I have yard signs. They're really cool. And if you want them, you can let me know. And I will, myself or somebody on my team will get those yard signs to you. All right. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to somebody that I met. One of the first candidates that I met. We were actually at an indivisible meeting at a church somewhere in North Phoenix. And here comes this woman who I thought for sure was going to be from Texas, but no, she's pretty much from Arizona.
Almost the same thing.
and she gave a speech about how important the role of our Arizona Corporation Commissioners are. So Shea Stanfield, welcome, and introduce yourself. Give everybody a little bit of background about yourself, Shea.
Okay, a little bit of background. Thank you, Jeanne. I just appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and to be doing this and getting the word out, because it's a great time when people are trying to educate themselves, have got their ballots in their hand, their early ballots, ready to send back for the primary. And so I appreciate the opportunity to get on. A little bit about my background is I moved here when I was 5, and it was obviously, it wasn't just my move, it was the family move. It was with Dad's job. And he was a health worker with the CDC. And he was sent to Arizona. He was a young guy. He started with the CDC, I think by 1950, right out of college. He graduated from Wake Forest University, or college in those days, in 1949 to 50 after using his GI Bill. And my parents were married, and he went to work for the Federal Health Service because his background was in health and education. And they sent him on assignment. So he was kind of the gopher for the CDC. And the assignment in 1957, July, was go out to Arizona and see what you can do about the epidemic that we're having on the Hopi Reservation. And so we moved here. And he went to work he was an investigator, just much like they call them contact people now. But anyway, he was an investigator for the epidemic. He got things straightened away. And the good thing about it is, I guess he did a good enough job because they left him here. So he worked his way up in the CDC, because every state has federal employees that work for them. As representatives to Atlanta. So that's what he was. He worked his way up and became a director. So that gave me the opportunity to grow up here. And my mom was an English teacher, and she didn't go back to teaching until we were in high school, but she was an English teacher. So we got the message very early on in our lives that health and education are the two important things. You stay healthy and get a good education. And so following that path, I went to ASU and got my BA in education, actually in graphic design and secondary education. And then I went on to get my master's in elementary education, with especially in special ed reading. And then since then, I've added all the 9 endorsements, ESL, library science, technology, all this stuff. All the teachers know all those endorsements. Yeah. So basically, it was an insurance policy not to get laid off when I started teaching in 1973. So during those years, I'm going to just take the 40-year block and say, okay, I was teaching. I did not stay at the same level or the same or at the same subject matter for that whole 40 years, of course. But I worked with a teachers union, the SEA, the NEA, and typically I was on district committees, and that's how I kind of got into the district politics of it and how you get things done, and worked with a negotiating team to negotiate the salaries and working conditions for teachers. And as I moved through that process, I got, my kids came along, and I was raising I have two sons. And so they were born in the early 80s. So they're grown now, of course. But the deal was I really got interested in that affecting change piece as a young teacher. So I had moved out to Cave Creek. I lived in Scottsdale for a while, but then I got married and he wanted to move out to Cave Creek and be in more open space. So that's what we did. So in the process of this 40 years, I went to work in the early 80s on Saving the McDowells in Scottsdale and joined that group, and I still know Carla, she's still around, and I see her to get that money that Scottsdale had put away into preserving land and continuing to preserve land so that everything wasn't paved over or golf coursed over. Yeah. So we got that done, which was wonderful. And that pivoted me into the next group on Spurcross. So Spurcross was literally a ranch north of Cave Creek. And we went to work on the Spurcross conservation area in the late 90s and into the 2000s. And we ended up doing an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Arizona, the county, Maricopa, and the homeowners in Cave Creek. What we did was we taxed ourselves 1/3 of the cost of Spurcross on our property taxes. The Heritage Fund, which isn't around anymore, was 1/3 of the funds, and then the county open space funds and recreational funds paid the other third. So we were successful in getting that saved. Well, that, where I didn't think I'd ever get into politics, that won me a seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Cave Creek. And I learned, that was wonderful because I learned about how important zoning was and how important it was to keep up with your zoning, and your community is only as good as your zoning. Yeah. And how you hold on to that. And so I spent a term doing planning and zoning, then the Board of Adjustment had an opening. So I moved up to the Board of Adjustment, and that is the judicial side of planning and zoning, where if you have discrepancies, lot setbacks, things that you want different in building, you go to the Board of Adjustment. So it gave me experience in following the statutes, applying the law, working with real estate people and builders and that kind of thing. And then eventually I landed up on town council. All this while I'm teaching, by the way, and sitting the bench at baseball games and doing all the other stuff that moms do. So, I mean, it wasn't, So anyway, I got on the council just in time for the water company, the private water company, the Cave Creek Water Company. The owner wanted to retire, and we went through the process of changing that into public, and then finally, it landed up in the town of Cave Creek, which won't go through that. A lot of problems then, a lot of problems now, but I'm getting on the Corporation Commission. Maybe I could fix the problems back then. Yeah, right. So, so we'll do that. So anyway, that's how I got my kind of basis in government. How does government run? How do school districts run? How do towns run? How do cities run? Actually, when I was on town council, I was pretty active at the state, down to the state, and game and fish and all kinds of stuff that kind of pivoted into all of that. And so it gave me a real inside scoop to state government. So in 2013, I retired. And so that my 40 years was, I would have gone on, but it got to the point where I hadn't had a raise in 12 years and my paycheck was going backward. I was bringing home less. And I crunched the numbers and went, I better retire if I'm going to ever make any money to survive here. So So I did, and then, but I kept my tutoring, and just because I kept my certification in teaching. So I'm still tutoring as we speak. Now my load isn't really huge right now because a lot of my kids have graduated over the last couple of years. And I took that opportunity to kind of think, what do I want to do differently? You know, is there something else to do rather than, I love tutoring, but is there something else to do to give back? So as I'm asking that question, I got an email. It was a year ago, March, from the Mandel campaign. And it said, announced Bill Mandel. It was from Sandy Kennedy's email. Bill Mandel's rerunning for Corporation Commission, sign his petition online. We're looking for 3 good Dems to fill 3 seats on the Corporation Commission. So I went, oh, Bill's running again. Awesome. Because he had done a good job. I knew about him, had followed his career because I'd lived here so long. So I signed his petition, and then I sent back an email and said, well, I'm a good Dem, pick me. And I figured they wouldn't, they would just blow me off and I'd never hear again. So I felt very confident about being very flip on the email. Well, 24 hours later, there was an email going, we're going to meet tomorrow morning, Sandra Kennedy, Bill Mandel, and a staffer, meet us. I'm going, I was shocked. It was like, it's like, no, this is like spam, Anyway, I went and had coffee with them, and we talked, and they just kind of got my background and what was going on with me. And I said, look, we need a majority on that commission. Bill, I knew what he was doing. I said, I somewhat know what I'm doing, but I would never forgive myself if I didn't step up now and do this. And we missed the opportunity to grab a majority on that commission. And so I started running a year ago, March, and been running ever since. Meetings, doing, figuring it out as I've gone along. So that's what got me into it. And the other piece of it was, I was sick and tired of people whining about the renewable energy standards not going anywhere. Actually, we don't have standards. We just have suggestions. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, this is a place that we can do something about that, because the one agency in the government that can set policy about increasing renewable energy is the Corporation Commission. So that kind of pivots us into what does the Corporation Commission do? When I was on town council and an environmental activist, I had a lot of contact with the commission on the business end. I would go and see if business licenses were up to date, or I would go search out information on complaints on them, and so I used the commission records. So I was familiar from that angle with them. But when I decided, okay, I'm going to have to buckle down and say, get the big picture, just not the small pieces. So the Corporation Commission is the fourth arm of government. It's an independent body, a 5-member commission. It is in the Article 15 of the Arizona Constitution. When Governor Hunt, who was part of the way back he was the president of the Constitutional Convention Committee for Arizona, they decided that they needed like a utilities commission to handle the railroads and the robber barons, because the railroad companies were literally running over people, grabbing with land grabs and getting the Transcontinental Railroad put in, and they just didn't want the railroads to have control. So they developed the independent commission, and then they said, well, let's put it in place for health, safety, and welfare. Let's give it a job where average Arizonans in the future can go to get things done. Because I read a piece not too long ago where Hunt actually, I won't use his language because you can't do that on public media here, but basically he said, I don't trust the scallywags that are going to be elected to the legislature and the governor's office in the future. We need a commission that really is an umbrella, and we're going to put this in place, and the people are going to do the electing. There's not going to be any governor appointments on this thing. because he wanted the governor totally out of it. So anyway, all businesses, foreign and domestic, have to register with the Corporation Commission. If you have a retirement product, a banking product, any kind of securities products, the Corporation Commission regulates and licenses all those brokers. So if there's bad actors, they're responsible for weeding them out and prosecuting them. They also have control over and work with the federal government on health and safety issues around railroads, pipeline safety, like gas pipelines, Southwest gas pipelines, any oil lines, any oil coming through, or any other kinds of things that might be piped in and across Arizona. So that there's the safety issues with the federal government, the environmental agencies there. And then finally, of course, we all know the big gorilla in the room, it's the utilities. So they have regulatory responsibilities for all utilities that are not municipal. So any private utility, in other words, we don't regulate the water company for Phoenix Water. You know, that isn't what we do. What we do is all the privates, big and small, across the state. And that's where your rate cases come into the commission on whether or not you get your rate increases. And also the commission has the responsibility to set policy for renewable energy. And that was when you interview Bill, you're going to find out that he and Sandra actually put in place the original policy back pre-2008, I believe, was 15% by 2020. And that was like, wow, if we could get 15% by 2020. And that was really progressive. And solar came online and people were putting solar in their houses and they had the rate metering and all that. Well, since then, dark money interests have come into the state. They've elected their own commissioners to the board. And the commissioners now have chopped down that standard, or that I think we're at 14 now. At last I read something, not even at 15. But the point is we need to be at 50. And so part of the commission that I know Bill and Anna and I have really committed to, along with Sandra Kennedy, is taking those rest rules, which is that foundation that was laid 12 years ago before dark money got in there, bringing it forward, beefing it up, and it looks roughly like 50% by 2030 and 100% by 2045. And it is our responsibility to create the policy and the push to get that done. Mm-hmm. And we're the only agency that can do that. And it's all with policy and regulation. And so that's why at this point in the game, the Corporation Commission is important all over, but that is really important. And with that, I'm looking forward to smaller businesses, solar panel companies, install companies, battery storage, all the stuff that goes along with solar and getting solar products on the grid with APS or SRP. Of course, SRP's got their own program too. We don't regulate SRP. But to work together to get that really, our teeth into it and get it going, because there's no reason why we can't. There's certainly plenty of sun to power all this.
Yeah, here we are. What do we have? Over 300. I don't know exactly how many sunny days a year, and the fact that we don't have solar panels on just about every single roof in every neighborhood in Arizona, and especially here in Maricopa County, just boggles the mind. And then when you start to do a little bit of research on it, you find out, oh, well, it's because of corruption, right? Yeah. And to me, first of all, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from a beautiful area of the Midwest with these green rolling hills. It's really lovely, but I don't know, there's something about Arizona that really just grabs you and takes hold, and the beauty of the desert here, the beauty of the Coconino Forest. I mean, everything about Arizona to me is just so beautiful. And this is the office where if you care about maintaining and preserving the integrity of our environment here and our water usage here in the desert, then this is a race that everybody should be focused on. But it's one of those things where I just don't, maybe it's not as sexy as governor or, secretary of state or superintendent positions, but it's vitally important to, our existence here. There's a great book. Oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to remember it. It's got the bird rising. I don't know. It's all about Phoenix and water usage. And when you read that book and you realize this is not sustainable, how we do things here. So if you care about the environment, this is a race that everybody should be keeping a close eye on and making sure that we get the right people. We had Anna on Monday. Shea is here today. And Bill Mundell, I think, is going to be here tomorrow, actually. Let's see what time. I want to make sure that I'm good with time. So what do you think the biggest issues then facing the Corporation Commission? What are the things that we need to act on now, or when you get into this office, what do you have plans for when you get into this office?
I think the very first thing is renewable energy. I mean, you have to, the good thing is there's a foundation laid there. There is already a good foundation. It just needs to be adopted and beefed up. And what's really wonderful is groups like the environmental groups and Sierra Club and some of the others actually have suggestions that line up with the rest rules and Sandra Kennedy has added some into that as much as she can as the one lone Democrat on the committee or on the commission. But so she calls it the CREST rules with a K, because she's put in to try to update it to get it ready to go. So the environment, it's like you said, the only way we're going to get the clean air that we need is to get on to the solar or the wind or whatever that energy is that makes Arizona sustainable. And you're right. I mean, we could even say we have 365 days of rain. How many rainy days have you ever seen here that didn't clear off by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or start out sunny? I mean, it's just, but our time is running out. And the other piece of it is, I know that Sandra is concerned. I think all of us are concerned about the lower income families and the families on tight budgets. How are we going to get them, number one, solar? How can we get them on solar and get them going? And because if we're doing this as a group and all of us are contributing to this effort, then we can't float all boats. We don't have enough water in Arizona, but we can run all the everything else, down the line where everybody can be affordable. And also the other issue is I'd like to see the commission to be proactive. There are issues like this business of cutting off electricity in the middle of the summer or even in the middle of the winter when it gets cold. And which horrified me from the standpoint that I know that when I was a counselor, and this is kind of a sad situation, but when I was a counselor and I had to do CPS reports, and you call in a case to CPS, the first thing they ask you is electricity, running water in the home. They don't even ask you about food because we can put food in the home, but are the utilities on? And if it's no, then that's a whole different, strike force that goes out there to help that family than if there's all that's together. So we know it's a life or death situation. So why aren't we proactive about policies like that?
Yeah.
Why there are other things. It's like I've heard from small business. Why is it so hard to get a business license? Well, I've never run a small business. I'm a teacher, but I can certainly look into that. It shouldn't be a cakewalk, but then it should be thorough, but it shouldn't be a lot of obstacles because we need young entrepreneurs to start their businesses and to get it going and to hire people. I mean, that's what makes Arizona. So, and the other piece of it is education. Is I'm hoping, one of my goals is to get out into the community. Okay, we don't have hearings. Okay, can Can I be down in Sierra Vista talking to the people down there? Can I be in classrooms over at the high school when we are in school? Can I go to environmental study classrooms and talk about the importance of the commission, or, you know, how kids can get involved in it and then what impacts there are? I mean, because there again, my whole thing is around education. If people know what's needed, they step up. If
Yeah.
they know that it's in their best interest and you have their best interest and you're listening, then I believe that more people will step up and understand. And instead of that, and like you said, when you're running the race for Corporation Commission, it is a race for governor. It's the same amount of signatures,
Yep.
the same amount of territory to cover, from you know, Douglas, Arizona to the Navajo reservation. We've had to do it all. So it's no different than that. And so it's interesting because people don't perceive that you need the money or anything, you know, the funds, because you're right, it's not a sexy race. But I tell you what, it is your quality of life race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of one of my things that I wrote up for a newspaper at one point early on, literally what happens on the Corporation Commission literally affects your life, and it affects the quality of your life and your children, your grandchildren, and anybody that comes to visit you. You know, it is a life and death situation.
Yeah.
And I think that the more people that understand that, it's not like we don't need the profile of the commission to come up, but we need the understanding of what it does and how important it is, you know, in taking care of that. And we need regulators. I'm sorry. I mean, we can't depend on some companies to do the right thing. We just can't. If we could, we wouldn't need to regulate.
Right. I mean, we're already seeing that right now with, you know, some of these shady organizations who are saying that they have cures or vaccines or, you know, that they're doing testing when they really aren't doing testing. You know, like it or not, we live in a capitalist society. And when you live in a capitalist society, the capitalists are going to try to capitalize off of situations. That's what happens. You know, you said one thing that I really have to refute, because you said, I can't wait to get out there in the community. And all I could think was, Shea, you have been out in the community, because it blew me away. There was one time, I don't remember when, I think it was back in the fall, and Shea kind of rattled off her schedule from the week, and I was blown away because I was down in Sierra Vista, and then I had to be over in Globe, and then I was over in Pace. Oh my gosh. So it's really hard running a countywide race in the 4th largest county in the United States. You're doing it statewide, and before we went on lockdown, you were really knocking it out of the park. So I want to make sure that people who are listening right now know how they can help you. I did, for all of you, and now there's actually 2. We got all the way up to like 12 for a second, but there's 2 people watching right now. I want people to know how they can help you. I put your link on the description, and I know that you and Bill have already submitted your 5s. Can you still take seed money?
Yes.
Okay.
We can take seed money for a little while longer. Bill submitted his 5s a couple weeks before I did, mid-June, and he has his money. He's got it. I submitted mine the last week of June. I have not got any money. I haven't heard from them. And so it's kind of interesting. Anna announced at Blue Tuesday this week, gratefully, that she's made all her 5s and they're submitting this week. And so in the meantime, yes, we can still take seed money. On my website, you'll see donate. That's DAC Blue seed money. Anything from $1 to 170 is max for individuals. So anything in between is great, and that helps us either with our printed material, or used to help with gas. You know, as you're driving around. but the seed money is important just to get that nitty gritty stuff. Buy the pens, that's how I printed my petitions. I had to print 2,000 petitions and, buy pens and clipboards, and everybody that contributed to that helped with that effort. So
Okay.
that was huge.
Okay, now are you looking for volunteers in the way of phone banking or texting? And can they find all that information out on your website?
They will be. The one thing that I need to put on the website, because I have to tell my admin person for the website to do this stuff. My signs are at the shop as we speak.
Great.
So I got the notice this morning that they're ready to be picked up, which in the next couple of days they will be. If anybody wants a sign, then all they need to do is go to my website and just down at the bottom at the website where it says contact me, all those messages come right through to my campaign email, and I answer them all every time they come in. If you want a sign, if your neighbors, if you want 10 signs to spread around at 15, then we need to know that, because I do have helpers that are willing to drive the signs where they need to go. All those are the small yard signs. And in this campaign, we decided that the small yard signs with the H frames, Bill will do his, I do mine, and Anna's going to do hers. But together, we are buying large signs with all our names on it that are the 4 foot by 8 foot that are going to be put up all around the state. And we have, that is professional people that put out those signs, and so they'll be going up after the primary. And the reason for that is that there are 3 seats open and there's 3 Dems running. So we don't really have a primary, but we would appreciate your vote anyway, because it gives us a vote of confidence, as we're going through this, and we'll all be on the general election ballot.
Great.
As far as phone banking goes, we have Swing Left getting that together for us, which is Stand Indivisible's political wing is in town. Arizona Mission is now in the state at all the levels. I have talked to them in Tucson and up in Mojave County. So they're getting the phone bankings going. And so there's a lot of help for Arizona for getting that together. But at the bottom, you'll see, if you want to volunteer, you just go down and what do you want to do to volunteer? You can host a Zoom meeting for us. You can take the yard signs. You can, if you have a suggestion how you can help, write it in and we'll get you fixed up. So it's kind of every postcard writing. People love to write postcards. They can write postcards. I have plenty of postcards. And then the other piece of it is I do have cards in the West Valley and the Sun Cities. What they're doing is they're just taking them out on their morning walks, and they're walking like a 6 square block area, and they just stuff them in every door. They're no door knocking, just put them in every door. And, it just gets the website out there, the name out there. Check this out. This is what this is. And so on your morning walks in your neighborhood, if you need a pile to pass out, to write a note on the back, that's great too, because that works.
Great. Well, I want to make sure that I honor your time. We've gone just a little bit over. Now, of course, I can't run clean. I am running countywide candidates can't run clean. So as always, jcformc.com is how you can support my race. We are looking for phone banking and texting volunteers right now. Of course, money is always an issue. I think we're going to see probably more money spent in 2020 politics in Arizona than we've ever seen. I just saw that Amy McGrath in Kentucky against Mitch McConnell raised a record-setting $41 million. And when I was doing call time today, this lady said, gosh, why do you guys keep bugging me? I'm almost tired of it. And I kind of just broke it down to her. I said, well, this is how elections are won or lost, unfortunately. We tried to outlaw dirty money, and that was, we didn't make it 2 years ago. It didn't get on the ballot this year, and unfortunately, the Republicans are the ones that are going to just keep throwing money at these elections and counting on the fact that the voters just aren't educated about these less sexy positions. So I think with this concerted grassroots effort and people with boots on the ground, we really are going to turn Arizona blue. And I think, Shea Stanfield, that you're going to be one of those people that we celebrate come November 4th, or the evening of November 3rd, I guess.
That
So
would be wonderful.
I can't wait. I'll
We have a good
definitely.
team assembled. Actually, we have a good team assembled, not only for the commission, but across the county.
Heck
We
yeah,
have great candidates, We have great candidates statewide. I've met so many of them. We trip over each other when we were going to meetings.
Yeah.
I
Well,
just think that all of them are wonderful.
I agree. Yeah, I've met some of the best people over the last year and a half, really. I mean, lifelong friendships and relationships with some of the hardest working people in the United States, and I couldn't be happier about it. So let's close real quick on, tell us, let's give everybody something fun. So what is something about you, Shea, that might surprise folks out there, whether it's a hidden talent or a hobby that you have? What's something that might surprise people to hear about you?
Well, this is interesting. I was thinking about that. They would probably not know that I adopt runners. And yes, good look. I like that look. Yes, I adopt retired greyhounds. And I work with the group in Tucson, Arizona Heartfelt Hounds, who is a 30-year-old organization down there. To date, over the 10 years, about 8 years, I've been adopting greyhounds. I've had 8 of them. And I typically take the old, the special needs greyhounds, the ones that they're wonderful. But a lot of people don't want to spend the time, or because I'm retired, I'm able to be around more. But anyway, I've had 8 of them. I have 2 now. Just adopted a new boy in May off the Daytona, Florida track. And he literally was retired on a Thursday and in my house the next Thursday. And he's the first well one that I've gotten, and what a handful. These guys are awesome, great athletes. But anyway, and then I have my little 8-year-old Callie, who was a champion, 150 races, and half of them wins. So she's 8 years old, so she's really retired now. But that's probably something you wouldn't know about me, because we walk them in the early morning and we walk them around, or late at night, walk them around the neighborhood. But unless you knew me, you wouldn't know that I'd adopt runners.
I love that. I was about to ask you if maybe like you adopted Katie Hobbs for an Ironman race or something. I didn't know what you were saying. Well, thank you so much, Shea, for joining us today. I can't wait. Again, like I said, we're going to raise a glass together and celebrate when we win, and we're going to turn Arizona blue. So have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.
All right, take
See
care.
ya.
All right, bye-bye.